Hold on, let me bring this up real quick. We're going to talk about just selling your expertise. Basically, the seven-figure status of hitting that seven-figure mode. So that's what I want to talk about today. All right, there we go. Oh, the picture looks nice. Hope there's no glitch anymore. Let me move. All right, cool. Last time there was a weird glitch. So I can't see who hopped on. It just shows a couple people are on. If you guys have any questions, make sure you ask some questions. But I want to talk about just building a seven-figure brand in general, just because a lot of people, they're selling their expertise, especially nowadays. You see everybody and their mama, they're creating a ton of content, but are you making any sales? And so I just want to talk about selling your expertise, and we're going to go over that. What's up, Clarence? All right, so the first thing I want to mention, whoa, what is that? All right, hold on. I guess this eCam thing, so I clicked off of it, and then there was this this thing that popped up as I clicked off of it. So yeah, oh well. But basically, so I want to talk about building the seven-figure brand, and I want to start out with the fact that most people tend to know what to do, they just don't do it. And I found this to be true because I'm talking with a ton of people, and I don't just mean the speakers on the Speak Pro Academy or just speakers in general. I mean a ton of people. Like I'm talking with fitness trainers, I'm talking with a ton of people who aren't into speaking and all that sort of stuff. And as I talk to them, as they ask me like, how am I building everything? What's up, Paul? What's up, Alex? As I'm building everything, they're asking like, well, what should I do? So I start with the basics and I tell them just basic stuff. Usually they know that sort of stuff. So then I'll go a little bit more detailed and I'll say, okay, then you got to do this. And what I see is that they haven't done any of it, like literally practically none of it. So let's say someone's about to, they want to sell their expertise. Let's say you're a salesperson, right? You want to sell your expertise in sales. You know you should create a sales funnel. You know you should create an offer, but for some reason you just haven't done it yet. And I see a lot of people, they do that. It's like a lot of people, they know what to do. They just haven't done it yet. And I think the reason for this is because there are no consequences. So there's no consequences for staying the same. A lot of people, they stay where they are because there's literally no consequences of staying there. There's no consequences of doing nothing. So when you do nothing, because maybe they have a job or maybe their spouse or whatever can pitch in, however, but because of that is why they struggle, because there's no consequences of not taking action. What's up, Rich? And so that's what I truly see. What's up, Ricardo? That's what I truly see all the time. And I keep going back to like, what is it that made the difference with me compared to everybody else, especially like with the entertainers, like how most of you guys know I started my business with the entertainment business. What's up, Ferry? With the entertainment business going from illusionist to mentalist, then eventually to speaking. And I wondered, I'm like, how come I was one of the only guys who, with all the entertainers around me, how come I was one of the only guys to do this for a living? Like, that's all I did. Whereas everybody else, they didn't really succeed at it. And I thought about it, and I was thinking like, well, it's probably because I had to. There was no other option for me. All the other guys had jobs, or maybe they had a spouse, and then they could kind of do it on the side, and then the spouse kind of help them out a little bit. I had nothing. Like, I didn't even have a rich parent. Like, we didn't have money. So no matter what, I had to make it work. And a lot of people, they don't do what they know because there's no consequences of not doing it. If you don't do it, your life is going to be the same. It's like you don't do anything, nothing changes. And I think that's why people just don't do anything, because there's just no consequences to it. So you truly want to do the whole thing where you increase the stakes of winning and losing. And I don't know what that means for you. Like, it can mean different things for everybody, but you just got to understand that's probably why a lot of people just don't do what they know in general. So you got to make sure that you're doing what you know. You got to also understand that your passion and selling the passion are two different things, completely different things. This is why it amazes me at the number of people who keep saying you got to be like, you got to like follow your passions, do what you love and all that. I'm thinking to myself, your passion could be cooking. Let's say you love cooking, but you want to now start a cooking YouTube show, a cooking YouTube channel. The things that you're going to do to grow this cooking YouTube channel, this cooking business, is going to be completely different than actually cooking. Completely different. And you may think they're related, but they're not. The only relation the two have is the word cooking. That's it. And you got to truly get this in your head to where whatever your passion is, That passion and selling the passion are two completely different things. And I knew this years ago when I first started my entertainment business. Well, I didn't know it at first because like everybody, like all the magicians, all the illusionists, I'm focusing on the tricks. I'm focusing on performing. I'm like, man, I'm really good, man, cool. But I wasn't getting gigs. And I was wondering, I'm like, why is this dude getting all of these gigs? He's not nearly as good as me, but he's getting all these gigs. What the hell's going on? It's because I confused the passion of performing with the getting the gigs. And that's what happens with speakers. It happens with everybody. People send me a message. They're like, Benji, I have a great story. I have a great message. And it's like, you got to understand, the world is basically saying, I don't care. I don't care what your story is. I don't care what your message is. Do you know how to get it out there? That's all people care about, or that's all the business cares about. So you have to truly, truly understand that from the get-go. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing the wrong things. You're going to be focusing on the wrong things. You're going to be wondering, like, why is this taking so long and why is it not working? It's because your passion of cooking or whatever that passion is has to translate, has to transform into a passion for marketing pretty much. So you have to truly, truly understand that if you're going to hit that 7-figure mark. And then what I tell people to do, so if you don't have like testimonials and all that stuff to sell, because if you're going to sell, the number one way to sell is social proof. Without a doubt, there's nothing better than social proof. If I can show you a gang load of testimonials and all this stuff, and all these people are accomplishing everything and making a gang load of money, that's essentially what's going to sell when you're selling your expertise. But if you don't have that, you start with your story. So in the beginning, you say, okay, here's my story. Like, my story, the reason why I even started Speaking Lifestyle is simply because I looked at all the other guys in terms of what they were putting out, and I glanced at it for a little bit. I'm like, this stuff is trash. And I that's literally what I said because I was doing it for a living. I'm sitting there, I'm looking at what these guys are teaching. I'm like, that's not how it actually works. What are these guys teaching? And so from there, I started with my story. I'm like, look, my story is I went from an entertainer to a speaker, and then here's how I was getting all these gigs. I started with my story. Then eventually my story turned into, look, these guys got booked. Dave got booked. Elio got booked. And it started turning into other people's stories. And that's what you're doing to like really sell. And if there's one tactic, one strategy that you do 24/7 over and over and over again, it's that. In the beginning, you start with your story. Then once you get other people's stories, you start promoting their story and you back off of your story. And the reason you want to back off of your story is because you got to understand business it's not about you anyways. Like when you create a business, when you create a brand, it's not about you. It's about the problem that you're solving. And so if you are constantly talking about your story, what's going to happen is people are going to look for reasons that are different in your story compared to their story. So when I did this all the time when, this happened to me all the time in the beginning to where I'm talking about me as a mentalist and doing all these shows, getting all these gigs and all that sort of stuff. Oh, the process of booking yourself for entertainment, booking yourself as a speaker, same thing. That's how I was able to transition, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking about all this stuff. People would send me an email. They're like, look, Benji, I get it, but you're an entertainer. Like you started with the mentalism stuff and you do all the shows. So obviously you're getting gigs and it's easier for you to get gigs because you're an entertainer, including a speaker. And I'm thinking to myself, it has nothing to do with it. Like, what are you talking about, man? It has nothing to do with anything. And I'm sitting here thinking like, guys like Tony Robbins, Les Brown, and Brian Tracy, Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, none of them know anything about mentalism or illusions or anything like that, but they have a bigger business than me. And I didn't say that to people, but that's what I was thinking. So, but what happened was they took everything that I was doing, the mentalism, the magic and all that, they looked for the differences. They were like, okay, here's a difference between him and me. And that's what they were doing. And that's why you don't want to keep your story to sell. Like if you keep talking about your story, people are going to look for those small differences and then you won't be able to sell. So what you're going to do is you're going to transition from your story to their story. You're going to say, look, Dave did this. Julie did this. Elio did this. Kareem did this. You're going to transition to other people's stories, and then they'll be able to see the multiple perspectives of other people's stories. So that's how you're really going to sell to hit the 7 figures, and you do it over and over and over and over again. That's all you do, just over and over and over again. That's how you're going to hit the 7-figure mark. What you're ultimately doing, and what I see in terms of a big problem with a lot of people when it comes to selling, they don't focus on a very specific problem. In the beginning, you go into a big market, but you focus on a specific problem within that market. And the more specific you get, the better, because now you can actually get very specific in terms of what it is you say. So for example, there's a fitness trainer who lives over at the other high-rise building I was at, and we were talking, and he wanted to do like the fitness stuff. And I told him, I'm like, okay, everybody's doing fitness stuff, but we need like some type of twist, like some angle to it, some positioning here. And he's 50, so he's over 50, or no, he just turned 50. So he's 50, and we were thinking like, okay, fit over 50 type of thing. So he's going to train people who are over 50. And so that was like the angle that we were going after. And I told him the reason he wants to do that is because we looked it up on, we just looked stuff up on Google. I just typed in, I don't know what I typed in, but I found somebody else's sales page about fitness over 50. And the copy was different. So if I'm selling fitness training to someone who's 20, 30 years old, I'm going to talk about, look, you're going to get six-pack abs. I mean, the girl's going to be looking at you like, damn. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the actual copy. But if I'm selling to people who are 50 and up, I'm not going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about, look, you got lower back pain. Look, we're going to work on that as we're doing the training. Like, we'll be able to give you workouts where that lower back pain is going to be gone. We're going to, does it feel like you eat an apple and you gain 5 pounds because your metabolism's slow? We're going to work out. We're going to increase that metabolism. So when you focus on a specific problem and you go after that specific problem, everything else kind of writes itself. And that's what it is you're doing in the beginning. Eventually, you can expand it. It can be the fitness for people over 50, then eventually it can just be fitness training. But in the beginning, what you do is you get specific. And you want to get specific because, once again, you'll be able to figure out what to write, what to say. That'll come a lot easier. Your sales are going to come a lot easier. And on top of that, you're going to figure out your systems. So you're going to figure out, okay, here's how I create a landing page. Here's how I create a sales funnel. Here's how we do the ads and the pixels and all sort of stuff. You're going to figure all that out. So when you do finally expand from fitness to 50 to just fitness training, now you'll have everything built in place. You'll have the checkout, you'll have the sales funnel and all that sort of stuff. Now you just change it a little bit, but your systems are already working. Your process is already working. So that's what you do in the beginning. See, what was that? How do we figure out the problem that companies are looking for speakers to solve? Well, so when I'm talking about selling your expertise and I'm talking about like getting gigs, that's two completely different things. The selling your expertise is kind of what I'm talking about. But when it comes to companies, what they're really looking for is just someone who's really entertaining. When you are getting paid to be a speaker, you're not a speaker, you're an entertainer. That's literally what they're paying for. And what I see a lot of speakers do, they overcomplicate this and like really, really overcomplicate it. They think that, let's say they're a leadership speaker. They think they're going to come in and do a speech for 60 minutes and solve the company's problems that they've been working on for a decade. You're not going to do that. When you come in as a speaker, you are literally an entertainer. And that's what they're really looking for when it comes to speakers. You're basically an entertainer. So sure, they can say like, oh yeah, we want you to give value and all that sort of stuff. But value, it's just one of those things where it's like, well, what is value? Like, what's considered value? And so as a speaker, your job is literally to entertain. And that's kind of what you want to think about when it comes to that problem. Because, I mean, think about it. Like, you just did a gig, and he has a very interesting story where he just did a gig out here in Vegas, and it was supposed to be like an hour presentation. But so the meeting planner brought him in and a few other speakers, and then there was, I think, what was it, three speakers before you, 3 or 4 speakers before him. And then finally it was his turn. He had to do an hour presentation. The people, they haven't eaten yet. It's like 10 p.m. at this point. By the time they say, oh, and our next speaker, the audience goes, oh, like you hear the audience kind of say, oh, damn it. Because it's now 10 p.m. and he had an hour presentation. So he just cut it down. He said, you know what? I'm going to do just 15 minutes real quick. And so he smartly cut it down and all that. And so what he was doing, I don't know why I went on this tangent, but what he was doing is he's essentially understanding the entertainment factor, because you can provide value. Like, he could have went up there for an hour and provided value, but if he couldn't entertain to keep that attention, then what's the point of value? So a lot of people, they confuse value with content. Value and content are two different things. And so you just want to understand that when it comes to speaking in general. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions, just make sure you ask, and then I'll be sure to answer. But in fact, speaking of overcomplicating things, a lot of people, they overcomplicate everything. Like whether it comes to the speaking industry of, well, why do companies hire me? The basic reason as to why they hire you is literally for entertainment. The same goes for selling your expertise. I see this happen all the time when people are selling programs and all sort of stuff. They overcomplicate everything. They overcomplicate the whole process. If you're going to sell your expertise, there's only two things you have to do. Two. That one, you have to have an offer. What exactly are you going to sell? Two, you have to get traffic to that offer. That's literally all you have to do. So what's the offer? What are you selling? And two, traffic to the offer. That's all you have to do. If you can do those things, if you can master those things, get the offer right and get the traffic to the offer, you won. And that's it. And then everything else is just details within that. It's kind of like, well, how do you create a good offer? Or how do you get traffic to the offer? So everything is just details within those things. So you don't overcomplicate it. That's why I keep saying, if you want to get booked as a speaker, all you do, don't overcomplicate the thing. All you do is reach out to events. That's it. You reach out all day, every day, reach out to events. If you overcomplicate it, you're going to basically be doing everything except the thing that's going to make you money, literally. And I see this all the time with every industry. You can look at any industry. You can look at fitness trainers. You can look at real estate agents, insurance agents, speakers, coaches, consultants. Everybody. What I see is when people overcomplicate it, they do everything except the thing that actually generates revenue. So don't overcomplicate it. If you say, look, I want to be a speaker, I want to get on stages. What do you do to get on stages? You reach out to events. That's it. Reach out, reach out, reach out. That's it. If you want to actually sell programs, you want to sell your expertise, what do? Traffic and offer, traffic and offer, traffic and offer. You say, okay, here's what I'm going to sell. Let me bring some traffic to this thing. That's it. That's all you're doing all day, every day. So don't overcomplicate the whole thing. What you're ultimately doing is you're testing everything. A lot of people, they don't start because they want to start at the end. When, of course, everybody starts at the beginning, no matter what. But everybody wants to start at, I got this perfect offer. I got this course. Everybody's going to buy it. Oh, my goodness. Everyone wants to start there. What they're not aware of is that you have to test everything. Like, you don't know, is your offer right? You don't know if your traffic is working. You don't know anything. You're figuring all this out as you go. That's literally what you're doing. And I wish more entrepreneurs would just admit this. More entrepreneurs, like, I guarantee, I don't care what entrepreneur you follow. I don't care what brand you follow, like the big time gurus, Grant Cardone, all these guys. If they're telling you the truth, I'm telling you, every single one of them, they figure it out as they go. That's how it works. You do not know the answers when you start. You simply don't. You can't. There's no possible way. I know guys who are doing nine-figure businesses, and when they start ads, they still don't know if the ad is going to work. They make a gang load of money off the ads. They've been doing it for years. They're freaking masters at the thing. But they start a new ad, and they cannot tell, is this ad going to work compared to this ad? They just don't know. So they test it. They say, okay, let's try this ad. Let's just see what happens. And that's what happens. They're like, well, let's just see. All right, cool, it works. All right, and then they scale up. So you have to remember that you're testing everything. You're testing your lead magnet. It's like, well, are people going to sign up? Are they going to opt in with this? Well, what about the offer? Like, are they going to buy this? Do they really want this? Or do they want more coaching? Do they want like a service? Or so you're testing out different things, and you're doing that over and over and over again. And because people aren't used to that, because people are they just think that they're just going to figure it out just instantly, because they're not used to that. They're not used to it taking years to figure out. They just stop doing it altogether. And then maybe they jump onto another thing, another bandwagon or something. So you really don't want to get to that level. Another thing I want to mention, I mention this all the time, you have to spend money. There is no way around it. I remember when I was trying to build the brand, I'm producing all this content, getting a lot of freaking content every single day, and it was all right. Like, I think the reason I didn't care in the beginning is just because I was making too much, like actually speaking and stuff. So I was like, I don't care what this online stuff does. I don't care. I'm getting paid 10 grand, 15 grand for an hour for my time. I don't care about no $20. So in the beginning, I didn't care. And so I was producing all this content, but then I said, you know what? Let me just spend some money on advertising. Literally, you're going to take 2 years. If you create content for 2 years, you can condense all of that into 2 months if you spend money on advertising. I guarantee it. if you're unwilling to spend money, you're not going to make any money in this industry, especially nowadays, now that everybody and their mama's producing content, everybody has a podcast, everybody's producing YouTube stuff, everybody's doing all this stuff. The only way you're going to stand out is by understanding that you have to spend money on advertising, because what the advertising is going to do is going to help you get there faster, because you're going to see, are your offers working? So if I produce a piece of content, like in fact, let's say this video, say we're done with this video. Okay, cool. I upload it to YouTube. All right, cool. Whatever. Gets a few views, gets 10 views. Okay, cool. Well, I don't know, like, is this a good video? Like, are people really interested in it? Like, let's say I offered you something. I offered you a product at the end. All right, would buy this thing. Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, are people like actually interested in the offer or whatever? Because there's only 10 people who watched it. So I don't know. But if I spend money on advertising, let's say I spend $200, I now get several thousands of people to watch the video. Well, now I'm going to get a better idea in terms of, well, is the video good? Is the offer good? I'm going to get a better idea. I now just squished all the time where it would have taken, who knows, a year, 2 years for the video to get 1,000, 2,000 views or something like that. Just leaving it there, whereas I can just squish that in 1 week just by spending a couple $100 on advertising. So you have to spend money, like you truly have to. And I know a lot of people, they don't want to because they're not sure if it's going to work. And if that's your mindset of I'm not sure and you don't do anything, you're simply never going to accomplish anything in business. Every single business person, every single one of them moves forward with uncertainty. It doesn't matter how uncertain they are. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. That's why I'm going to try it. That's literally what everyone does. You're like, I'm just going to try it. Let's see what happens. And that's how you need to operate just 24/7 if you're trying to sell your expertise and everything. What do you say? If I speak at a company lunch for free, can I count this as an event and use the company's brand on my website for credibility? All right. That just made me smile, because what I used to do to get companies brands on my websites. So I was thinking of offering free lunches and free speeches just to get their brand. So the reason why I smiled and laughed is because what I did to initially get the company's names on my website and everything is, as once again, you guys know I'm an illusionist. And before I was like performing on stages, I was performing in restaurants. So I would go into a restaurant. Well, the restaurant would hire me. I would walk up to the tables and I'd say like, hey guys, while you're waiting for your food, would you like to see a miracle? And I always say miracle because people are like, oh, miracle. Hell yeah, I'd like to see a miracle. So I always say miracle. I'm like, would you guys like to see a miracle? So I would show them stuff. At the very end, I'd take out, it was a flip camera at the time. The phone cameras weren't nearly as good. But I'd take out the flip camera and I'd be like, hey, so can you just say your name and like the company you work for and like what you thought? And they'd be like, well, my name is Ben. I work for Remax. And man, this dude was amazing. And I would take that and I'd be like, well, I just performed for Remax technically. I mean, the guy works at Remax, so I can throw it on my website. And that's literally what I did. And the funny thing, speaking of Remax, after I did that with Remax, I threw one of their quotes on my business card. So it was like I performed for some guy at the restaurant. He worked for Remax. I just threw the quote on my business card. I said, blah, 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 Remax. And then it just so happens I actually got hired by Remax. The CEO, the vice president, everybody was there. And so I go there and I didn't think about it at the time. I just gave my business card to the CEO. I'm like, hey, yeah, here you go. Like, if you guys ever need anything, just let me know. And she looked at it. And that's when I thought, I was like, oh, shoot. She's probably thinking like, how can I have this quote from Remax when I'm just now doing the show today? But she didn't say anything. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And so that's literally what I did to get all these brand names on my website. And then eventually, so like, let's say, I can't remember what the company names were, but let's say it was Remax. Eventually I would replace the ones I did from the restaurants with the actual gigs. So like, let's say at the restaurant, I'm trying to think of a company that I didn't like do stuff for, Lowe's. Okay. So let's say Lowe's. Let's say I'm performing at a restaurant and I get a testimony from a guy who works at Lowe's, and I put it on my website. I put the logo on my website. Okay. Now this is in the beginning, but let's say a year goes by, I'm doing all these other gigs, and all of a sudden, boom, I got hired by Home Depot. Boom, I got hired by American Furniture. Well, now I replace the Lowe's logo with the Home Depot logo. I now put the American Furniture logo on there. So I would basically replace them with the more legit ones. And that's kind of what I would do. So technically, yeah, when it comes to just speaking like that, there's nothing wrong with using their logos on your website, and then you can replace it eventually. But that's literally what I did in the beginning in terms of getting the testimonials and all that sort of stuff. The Remax one was pretty awkward. I was for sure she was going to say something, but yeah, she didn't say anything. So as Clarence said, I did the same thing with local radio station, and their program director wasn't too thrilled, but I didn't care. Yeah, usually radio stations are pretty cool, but yeah, I mean, it happens. And so, all right, so there was that. I mentioned that. The last thing I want to mention real quick in terms of selling your expertise is a problem that a lot of people tend to have is the imposter syndrome. So a lot of people kind of feel this, they feel the imposter syndrome. And I made a whole video about this a while ago in terms of how to overcome that. The imposter syndrome, the reason why people feel this when they're trying to sell their expertise is because they're focusing so much on themselves instead of focusing on the audience. And that's what happens. They're thinking like, well, all right. So in fact, let's say boxing. Okay. So I can box, but I'm no Mike Tyson. So if I were to create content, or no, let's say even better, because I've been boxing for a while. Let's say stock market. Okay. So stock market, I just started last August. So the stock market, I know a pretty good amount, but I'm no freaking Warren Buffett. So let's say I wanted to start a YouTube channel on just investing in general. I could think to myself, well, I technically haven't even been into it for more than a year. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like faking it. I don't know. I could think that way, or I could just think, well, even though I haven't been into it for a while, I could just interview people who've been into it for a good minute. I know a day trader over in the other high rise. I talked with him the other day. He knows some other people who are full-time investing. I know some other people. I could just talk with them and say, hey, tell me about your investing strategies. How do you pick a stock? So I could do that, and I can now build a business based around that where it has nothing to do with me. And so you have to remember that the imposter syndrome, it only happens because you're too focused on yourself and you're not focused on the problem that you're actually solving for people. So if I'm focused strictly on, let me solve the problem of investing for people, let me figure out how do we get the best investing advice out there, then it has nothing to do with me, my background, my investing tips. Is just, well, what did Warren Buffett say? What did Ray Dalio say? Like, so it's stuff like that in terms of overcoming the imposter syndrome. There's either that when it comes to the imposter syndrome, or there's like with me in the beginning to where when I started speaking lifestyle, there was no imposter syndrome whatsoever. I was just like, these mofos have no idea what they're talking about. I've been doing this for years. What the heck are they doing? That's what happened with me when it came to speaking stuff. But understand that when it comes to the imposter syndrome, your focus is just too much on yourself. That's why you feel like an imposter. So if you focus strictly on the clients, the customers, the audience, then you're going to overcome that imposter syndrome easily. And that's what you have to do. So that's really all I wanted to talk about when it comes to selling your expertise, at least for now. Maybe I'll go into more detailed stuff later on. Let's see, what is this? Got that. All right, any questions in terms of just selling your expertise or speaking or anything like that, just let me know. I'll wait a few seconds because I know there's a delay. And so I want to reemphasize in the beginning, I know some people, they hopped on late. And so maybe you guys didn't hear when I said that your passion and selling your passion are two different things. That's probably like the most important thing I want to mention here. So it's like if you're speaking, okay, you like to speak on stages or whatever, but getting hired to speak is a completely different ballgame. And so it doesn't matter what your passion is. If your passion is cooking and you want to start a cooking business, it's completely different. What you're going to be doing on a day-to-day level is going to be very, very different. You're not going to be cooking all day. In fact, you're probably never going to be cooking. Instead, you're going to be focusing on everything else. And that's how you really have to think about this when it comes to selling your expertise. Your expertise is simply there to help you when it comes to hiring people. So if let's say you're cooking, okay? So your expertise is in cooking. You want to start a cooking business, and you want to put Martha Stewart to shame. You want to put what is that chef dude? Gordon Ramsay. You want to put Gordon Ramsay to shame. So you want to put these guys to shame, and you're way better at cooking than them. Well, you now have to figure out, well, how do I create that personality? Because Gordon Ramsay, who knows if he's the best cook? Probably not the best cook in the world. I'm sure he's great, but he's probably not the best in the world. But he has that personality, that great TV personality where everyone, their attention just they're compelled by this guy. And so now you got to think, okay, I'm good at cooking. Now I got to create this personality. Okay, now I got to learn how to film a YouTube video and edit the YouTube video. Okay, now I got to learn how to do this. Now you got to learn everything except cooking. And then the cooking only comes into play when you're hiring. So now if you got to hire someone, so now you're saying, okay, I'm going to hire a cook. Well, you can now ask them questions that cooks would normally know. So you'd say, well, what do you do if you're going to cook this? How are you going to cook this? And then if they BS you, you know it. Like, you're a cook. You're like, man, you don't cook stuff like that. Come on, you're going to burn it. What do you do? You burn water, don't you? Come on, man. So that's when the cooking comes into play. That's when the passion comes into play. It's when you're hiring people. Let's see, you did the same thing. Okay, I got hired to do a team building event in Denver. I've never done one before, but I said yes. Yep, nice. Yes, that's how it works, by the way. It's like when events, they come to you, especially like in the beginning in general, when they come to you, you're like a chameleon to where they say, hey, can you do this? Sure, of course I can. All the time, of course. And that's how you do it, because you have to get used to little things. You have to get the small wins in. So if you keep failing, of course you're going to give up. You have to get small wins in. You have to make sure that your process is working. So it's kind of like your process is working in terms of getting the gigs, but maybe you just got a different gig than you wanted. But it's kind of like little things in terms of you need to say yes to stuff like that, even if you can't, if that's not really your expertise. I did that all the time in the beginning. Like, in fact, yeah, in the beginning, it was I was a keynote for about a year before I actually started speaking. I got myself hired as a keynote speaker for a year before I started speaking about stuff. And then when people say like, what do you speak about? I was like, motivation. And I just made stuff up as I went. And then I figured stuff out as I went. Remember, the whole thing is you figure it out as you go. There's no possible way to know the answer right now. There's just no way. You figure it out as you go. So you say, how can we create consequences when there aren't any without quitting our job or other drastic actions? Well, that's kind of that's kind of I don't want to say the word that's popping in my head is counterintuitive, but I know that's the wrong word. But that's just not right. Basically, you're saying, okay, how can we create consequences when there aren't any without when there aren't any without quitting our job or other drastic actions? The whole purpose of creating consequences, of making it real, is because there is something drastic that you did. That's the whole purpose. If you aren't willing to do something drastic, there won't be consequences, and then you're going to be in the same place. So that's the whole point. So the whole point of doing something drastic is to create those consequences. And so it's like, I know I'm saying your name wrong, Ulidi. You gotta tell me how to pronounce it. But it's like Ulidi, like what he did, where they sold their house. They were like, okay, we're going to sell our house. And that's actually, I guess that is a good way to combine the two, to where he didn't do it to where he's going to be broke by next month. They sold their house. They got the money from the house. They moved to a new place that's cheaper. So like if you live in California and you move to Vegas, well, now it's going to be a whole lot cheaper. That's a smart move to make. And so he has money in the bank for that. He knows for 3-4 years straight, he can just do the speaking, like go all in on the speaking, contact events nonstop. He knows he can do that. And so that's a way to make sure that you're not doing something completely stupid, because I don't recommend anyone just quit their job and you only have 1 month's worth of savings in your bank account. You quit your job like, I'm going all in on speaking. That's not how it works, because you want to think in terms of maybe a year, at least a year to get momentum, 2 years to like really do stuff. That's how you really want to think about it. But you can't say like, how do I create consequences without doing something drastic? Because the way you're going to create the consequences is by doing something drastic. And that's like what I mentioned with me in the beginning, to where the only reason I was able to like really do stuff is because it was a consequence for me, in terms of I had to make it work or I was going to get a job. There was no other way. I couldn't ask my mom for money. She didn't have money. So like I couldn't ask anybody for money, nothing like that. So I had to make it work. And right now, a lot of people, they just don't have to make it work. And that is why people are struggling so bad. So one of the things, I mentioned this a while ago, I think in another video, One of the things you can do is you can take your money. Let's say you have $100,000. Okay. So if you have $100,000, you're going to feel pretty comfortable. Like you got $100,000 in your savings, you're going to feel pretty comfortable. So you're not going to like really go all in with stuff. And so if you have 100,000, what you can do is you can take 80,000, put it into the stock market or into crypto or something. Now you're going to start to feel something, especially when the stocks go down and when crypto goes down. Now you're going to be like, oh, snaps. Oh, my, what did I do? So it's not like you lost the money. You didn't lose the money because you didn't sell it yet, but you haven't lost it. But in your mind, you're like, oh, my goodness, I can only access $20,000 of my money in the bank right now. The rest is stuck in the stock market because if I take it out, I'm definitely going to lose a lot of money. So that can essentially light a fire inside of you to where it's like, oh, now you got to keep going. And a friend of mine actually did this. Like a friend of mine, he hit 7 figures when he was building his brand and all that sort of stuff. He hit 7 figures. He just got bored with all of it. He just stopped doing it. And he just got really comfortable and he's thinking like, well, all right, how do I like get myself back into work? So he got burnt out because he hit 7 figures. He got burnt out. He said like, how do I get back into it? And he did exactly what I said. He put all his money into the stock market, like damn near all of it. And because of that, it forced him to kind of say like, all right, I really got to get back into this affiliate marketing stuff. I really got to build this brand. So that's kind of what happened with him. But you truly have to get to that point where it's like you have to make the consequences real. A lot of people, the consequences are fake. It's just there in their head in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna do it. This is for real. New Year's, my New Year's goal is for real this time, and it's just in their head, but the consequences aren't real. When I say consequences are real, I mean if you did nothing for a month, you're gonna be homeless. Like, or something bad is going to happen. Like if you did nothing for a certain amount of time, you're done for. Like you're going to be going to McDonald's and you got to work for McDonald's. Like there are real consequences. So that's what has to happen. See, Kareem said, I quit my job, but I also made strategic moves. Yeah, I was flipping houses, which replaced my paycheck, paying off debt, which meant I needed less to live off of while clearing my time to speak and travel. You'll be amazed how bold you get when you're sitting on a nest egg. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's stuff like that in terms of, I mean, Kareem, yeah, I remember he's posting all the pictures about flipping the houses and everything. But what you're doing in terms of, you don't do dumb stuff. Like I say, you're not just dumb in terms of, well, Benji said I got to make real consequences. I'm going to quit my job today, even though I don't know anything about how to get on stages. I don't have anything set up. I'm just going to quit my job today. And I hope to get everything good by next month. Like you're not that stupid. Hopefully nobody's that dumb because it's not going to work. No matter how bad you want, it's just not going to work. So it's similar to like Logan Paul fighting Mayweather or Conor McGregor fighting Mayweather, to where it doesn't matter how positive thinking they are, they're not going to win. The guy's a master. Like you can think all the positivity you want against a chess grandmaster, he's going to whoop your ass in chess. Like it doesn't matter. You can be the most positive person in the world, the Dalai Lama himself. You're going to get your ass whooped in a game of chess against a chess grandmaster. So you don't do anything stupid like that. You simply say, okay, I'm going to be a chess grandmaster. It takes about 10 years to start or 10 years to get there. Okay, well, maybe I can condense that into 8 years if I hire Carl Magnuson to teach me. And so that's kind of what it is you're really doing. And then you kind of go all in, like, okay, I'm going to go all in. And all right, so that's really what it is you're doing. So let's see. The biggest feedback I got from my speech was you motivated us, entertained, but you didn't teach us what to do next. How do I instruct and entertain if I only have an hour? Okay, so the way you do that is you think in terms of one thing that you're going to really teach them. And I know a lot of people, they think like 3 things. It's like, oh, step 1, step 2, step 3. You think, what's the one thing I want them to get out of this? That's it. Like, what's the one thing? So I don't know what your one thing is, but you just focus on that one thing. You can say it in different ways. You can tell different stories, make different demonstrations, but you focus on just one thing, and then that's that. So that's kind of what it is you're doing. So I don't know what it is you like talked about, but let's say the one thing is ambition. Okay, so let's say I'm going to do this presentation. I'm going to talk about ambition. So now with ambition, I'm going to say, okay, I'll tell a story about about consequences. Oh yeah, all of a sudden I got let go by all these restaurants, and now I knew inside of me, deep inside of me, there was this ambition, this fire, just lit this fire inside of me, and I just went all in. And then now I switch from that, and I just start talking about ambition in general. And I talk about, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden I did this and the blah blah blah. And so you're talking about one thing, because if you talk about several things, people are just going to forget. So that's kind of how you do it in terms of teaching, entertaining at the same time. Just remember that you don't want to go into details. I've studied a lot of this stuff when it comes to just teaching and entertaining at the same time. The more detailed you get, the more tuned out people are going to be. So you don't want to go into detail. The detail only happens when they get through the payment part. So it's like education. So education all the way up to high school is free. Then you get to college, you got to pay for it. But everything that you learn in college, it can be learned in a library. Like everything, literally everything. There are freaking books that cost $200. You can learn all that stuff. Heck, you can probably learn on YouTube right now. You don't even need a library. But you can learn everything in college. And you can learn it just by going to Amazon or YouTube, combining the two. But the reason why people don't is because the investment. So when they invest 50 grand in a college, they're willing to go into much more detail, and they're willing to be bored reading all this boring stuff and trying to put all this boring stuff into their head. They're willing to do it because they just spent $50,000. On the other hand, if they just bought a few books for, I don't know, $15, $20 here and all sort of stuff, they're less likely to truly go into detail because they just don't need to. They haven't invested in it. So when you're delivering a speech, when you're delivering content in the beginning, especially, you want to dumb it down. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he is the perfect example of this. If you watch this guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's like an astrophysicist, and he takes really complicated subjects and simplifies them in such a way that a freaking 10-year-old could understand it. It's crazy how good he is at this thing. But he's really good at explaining astrophysics, physics, quantum physics. He's just good at explaining science in general. He's like an updated, a new version of Bill Nye the Science Guy. But he's really good at explaining because he dumbs everything down. And that's kind of what it is. That's what you do when you're teaching stuff. You have to dumb everything down, make it really simple, do demonstrations and all that sort of stuff until they pay. Once they pay, now they're basically saying, yes, give me more details. That's what happens when someone pays. So I'm not saying you wait until they pay to give them details, because that's I don't know, oh, it's messed up in terms of you got to wait until they pay to give them all the good stuff. No. You wait until they pay because they're not going to pay attention until they pay. So that's how it works when it comes to the teaching. I made this mistake with Speaking Lifestyle a while ago when I was teaching all this stuff, and I taught all the details. Because remember, in the beginning, I looked at all these other guys in terms of what they were teaching. I'm like, this is some absolute nonsense. What are these guys talking about? What? And I remember looking at it. That's why I started Speaking Lifestyle, because I'm like, I actually do this, and these guys, they just must have read a book or something. All this stuff is just trash. So I went into detail. I was like, all right, here's how you set up your CRM. Set up the lead score like this, the sales cadence, and you got to do this. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? What is a CRM? I'm like, what? So that's kind of what it reminded me of in terms of the level of details. And so I had to back off of it. I had to back off the details, because the only people who actually implemented it were the people who bought the Speak Pro Academy, Kareem, Uliti, Alex, Rich, Ferry. When people buy, now they're saying, yes, I definitely want the details. But in the beginning, they just don't want it. They want the basics. So that's kind of what it is you do. Morris, what would you say? How do you get companies to hire you without having a list of lengthy, satisfied customers, or if your list of speaking gigs have been non-paid? So it doesn't really matter if it's been paid or non-paid. They don't know that. I mean, they have no idea if your gigs were paid or non-paid. That question is a loaded question. There's a lot of stuff to unpack with this. I can't go into too much detail. We'll be here all day, every day. But basically, the way you get companies to hire you. So I don't know, Morris, if you have a website or not, but there's a couple steps you take. One, you get the website up. So you put a website up. You start, let's say you're going to be a motivational speaker. Okay, boom, put motivational speaker on your website, and you get the website set up. Two, you just start contacting events all day, every day. In the beginning, when you're contacting events, you have to you have to do it differently, a little bit differently than let's say someone like Kareem, who's like already established or something. In the beginning, you have to do whatever it takes to get gigs. If people say fill out this RFP and you got to pay $200 to speak on our stage, you say, okay, here's the RFP, here's your $200. Thank you. Do you want me to do a backflip as well? I'll do that too. I'll do 2 of them. And like in the beginning, that's what you got to do in the beginning. And eventually you can kind of say like, look, I don't even want to fill out this RFP. Hell no, I'm not paying your $200 to speak at your event. But in the beginning, you essentially do whatever it takes in terms of contacting events. You have to reach out to events. If you don't have, let's say with your website, you need a website. You can be really creative in terms of how you get stuff on your website. So if you have nothing, let's say you literally have nothing, like you woke up today and you're just like, I'm going to be a motivational speaker, but I don't like have anything. I have no website, no pictures, no videos, no nothing. Well, what do? Well, in that case, your website is going to be a 1-page website. So now what you do, instead of getting video footage of you on a stage, because you can't, instead you create, you hire a videographer for $500, $1,000, however much, but you hire a videographer and you get them to create like an about me story. So similar to like America's Got Talent, American Idol, The Voice and all that sort of stuff, where you see the people, they're about to step on stage and then you see the story about them. You now see like, oh yeah, well, I mean, me and my mom, we were homeless at one point, and I mean, all I could do was just sing for pennies on the train, right? And that's it. And you see that story that they're telling, and it looks really cool. They got the cool lighting. They got some nice B-roll footage of the train going by, and you like singing and begging for food and all this. They got all sort of stuff. That's what you do. You create video like that. You hire a videographer to create a video like that. That is going to be your main demo video. And your videographer is going to create a really good looking video because you're going to hire a videographer. You're not going to do it yourself unless you're that good at creating videos, but you're going to hire a videographer. It's going to be $1,000 well spent. So you hire a videographer to do that. You put that as your main video on your website. The pictures that you get from your website, you're going to go to stock footage websites like shutterstock.com. You type in keynote speaking or audiences or something like that. You buy those pictures. You now use that to design your website. You can hire a graphic designer or whatever, but you use it to design pictures on your website. And now, boom, you're going to have a really good looking website just by doing those 2 things. And then from there, once you start getting the gigs, you start adding more stuff to the website and all that sort of stuff. But in the beginning, you got to be a little creative with it. You also got to understand it's going to take way longer just because you don't have all that stuff. And this is why I keep telling people, I'm like, y'all got to join, because if you're especially starting, you don't understand how hard it is. Like, not only is it hard to get all that stuff, but it's hard to figure out how to use a CRM, how to contact the events, how to do the outreach. It's hard to do that and start out at the same time because you have no idea what you're doing. And so, in the beginning, there's just a lot that you have to do, but you got to start with the website and the outreach. So 1, build the website, get the website up and running, doing what I just mentioned. And then 2, start reaching out to events. And then even when you're reaching out to events, don't reach out to the big events. In fact, what I'd probably do in the beginning, if I didn't have footage or anything, I'd probably reach out. I'd type in like conferences. So conferences are actually a really bad way to get hired, because conferences, they rarely, if ever, pay speakers, because the way they see speakers, conferences see speakers as an expense. You're no different than the coffee that they had to pay for the event, than the Wi-Fi that they had to pay for the event, than the napkins that they had to pay. You're in the same category as all that. You're an expense as a speaker. So conferences, they kind of suck when in terms of payment for speakers. And then there's the company events. The company events, they see you as an investment. It's like Google, how they have massage chairs and they have the free dinner and lunch and all that stuff at their offices. All that is an investment, because they know, hey, if we bring this in, people are going to love working here. They're going to stay here. They're going to work more. So if we bring in this really cool, entertaining speaker, people are going to love the fact that we're hosting this event. Oh my goodness. So they see you very differently. But in the beginning, if I'm starting out in the beginning, I'm going to go after conferences, because conferences, because they see you as an investment, you're also saying, look, you don't have to pay me a dime. In fact, I would like to sponsor your event. I would like to give you $500 to be a sponsor. And in exchange for that $500 sponsorship, I'd like to speak at your event for 15 minutes. Let me just speak for 15 minutes. That's it. They won't even know I'm a sponsor because I just want to do a motivational speech. That's all. I'm not going to pitch my products or nothing. I just want to do a motivational speech for 15 minutes. And I'll give you $500. Most conferences, especially people who are doing their own seminars, they're more likely to say yes. Like, okay, yeah, sure. Hell yeah. We're going to take your $500. Hell yeah, man. Like, that's what's going to happen. But a lot of speakers, they have the egos. They're like, I'm not going to pay to be on a stage. No, I got to get paid to be on stage. Speakers, they have the ego. And because of that ego, they set themselves back a year or two. So in the beginning, you got to be willing to pay to get on a stage. You look up conferences and do exactly what I said. Ask to be a sponsor, pay to be on the stage, and even you just got to get creative with it in the beginning, especially. But there's basically two things you have to do: get the website up and reach out to events. That's all you got to do. And the hard part is going to be not getting distracted, especially nowadays, like with all the content creation stuff. Everybody's like, you got to have a podcast, you got to have a YouTube channel, you got to have a book. You got to, like, you're going to get distracted, and you have to really get tunnel visioned on stuff. You got to basically say, look, I understand that I got to get the website up and I got to reach out to events. If it's not one of these two things, then I'm just not going to do it. Like, yes, having a podcast, if you get to Joe Rogan's status, hey, it works. Yes, having a YouTube channel, if you get to Mr. Beast status, yes, it works. But if you're doing all of these at the same time, you're going to get none of them done. And so you have to, like, really, really focus in the beginning and just stop getting distracted by everything. How do I figure out that the message that I'm passionate about is something people are willing to pay for? Well, you don't. So you don't really know if the message that you're passionate about is something that people are willing to pay for. So what you do is, like, especially if you're talking with the events, you're kind of asking them, like, hey, tell me what the event is about. Like, what exactly are you looking for out of me, and that sort of thing. So you don't, like, remember in the beginning when I said you're testing everything? That's what you're literally doing. You're testing. You're kind of just, you're getting a feel for them. It's kind of like, well, what do you want? And, like, that's basically what you're doing. When people... This is why I say, like, one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever heard is only do what you love, because it's not possible. It's not possible to do what you love. You do what you must. If what you love doing is what you're actually doing, great. That's so rare, it's ridiculous. You have to do what you must. And so the same goes with, like, your message. You can have a message and everything, but your message is you. It's all about you. But once again, business has nothing to do with you. Business is about them. So what you're doing is you're kind of just looking and you're trying to figure out, when you're talking to them in the emails and stuff, like, well, tell me more about your event. Like, why do you guys want to bring in a speaker? What's the purpose of the speaker? Like, what exactly are you trying to do? Like, just motivate everybody or what? So that's kind of what it is you're doing. Like, in the beginning, you're definitely a chameleon. And that's really what it is you're doing. Eventually you'll get to a point, like, let's say someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, they kind of bring him in and they say, like, well, we want you to kind of just, well, no, he's different because he just does Q&As. But let's say Grant Cardone. So, like, they bring Grant Cardone in, they understand, hey, he's going to be a sales guy. And then it's kind of like Grant Cardone can come in and he can just start talking about sales in general. And then whatever he says, people are going to listen to, because it's more about him. It's more about, they just want to see Grant Cardone. It doesn't really matter what he's talking about. And so, but in the beginning, you don't know. In the beginning, you're just testing everything. That's what you have to do in the beginning of stuff. All right. Cool. So let's see. We got all those, got those questions. All right. Any other final questions before we are done for the day? But I do want to stress that point in terms of you're figuring things out as you go. There's literally no way to know. You're testing everything. And this is why I said, where the guys, even though I know the guys who, they got 9-figure business, even when they start a new ad, and they're like the best at ads that I've ever seen. I mean, it's insane how detailed they get when it comes to their advertising. They're the best at it. But when they start a new ad, they don't know if it's going to work. They're just like, I don't know. We're just going to test it. We're going to figure it out. And that's kind of how you do everything. That's how you sell your courses. That's how you sell your speech, everything. It's like, I don't know if this is the right message. I don't know. And you just don't know. And that's kind of how you operate. And that's why I even tell people, like, it's not even about you saying, here's what my message is. It's just, you're in this category. Like you're in the category of being a sales speaker, or you're in the category of being a leadership speaker, or in a innovation speaker, or a motivational speaker. You're in this category. And then when they hire you within that category, you can now say whatever the hell you want to say. Like when they hire you as an innovation speaker, if they don't specifically tell you, we want you to like talk about innovation like this, if they don't specifically say it, they're giving you leeway on what it is you can talk about. So your message can be whatever you want the message to be. And yeah, like a few times events, they will say like, hey, our theme is this. If you can somehow incorporate that, that'd be pretty cool. Like a few times they will do that. But yeah, there's really no way. So you're just like guessing. You're a chameleon. That's how you really work it. Work it. All right. So, all right, we are good to go. I think that's all the questions for the day. All right, cool. So if there's no more questions, we should be good to go. All right. So I will probably be doing these maybe, I'm thinking like on Mondays. Yeah, probably Mondays at 9 or something like that. I may do it. I don't know, maybe later. I don't know. I still got to think. I usually do boxing at 9 a.m. All right, but since there's no more questions, I guess we were good to go for the day. So I will see you guys soon or probably next week. Take care, everybody. Adios.